As we draw closer to the October 19th local government elections, we're seeing a number of interest groups sending questionnaires to candidates, tabulating scorecards from their responses, and then organizing candidates by based upon how much or, frankly, how little they support particular causes and issues. One such group is Restore Island Rail, which has launched a new election initiative tracking candidate positions on the future of the Island Rail corridor and encouraging voters to ask where candidates stand on rail restoration. Joining us now to discuss it is the founder of Restore Island Rail Society, Warren Skaalrud. Warren, welcome back to the program. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So you've launched an election scorecard focused on the Island Rail corridor. What prompted Restore Island Rail to get involved in the local election conversation in this way?
Okay, let me clarify. We're not doing a scorecard.
Okay.
What we're doing is we're actually it's an education campaign, and then also we're letting voters know where people stand, or in their own words, right? Mm-hmm. So in the past, we've had a lot of municipalities up and down the island that have had different views of what the corridor should be, and that's caused a bunch of confusion, and they've never been able to come to a common vision on the entire thing. So what we've decided to do is to actually let voters know, which of these candidates are actually supportive of rail, and critically, do they understand what they can do as councillors to actually increase the case for rail? So, things like, how would they make it a priority, whether they understand zoning decisions and transit exchange placement, things like that. Also, if they understand how integrated rail, bus, and trail networks work together to be more efficient, and whether they would approach transportation planning from an island-wide perspective, right? So there's a lot of things that the council, being a councillor, especially a new one, is a learning exercise.
Yeah.
I've watched so many council meetings where the councillors are like, "Isn't this a BC thing? What can we do?" And I've seen that repeatedly. So what we decided to do this year, I see other, groups that are going out there and with slates and stuff like that. But what we want to do is, this is really important for Vancouver Island, first of all. Like, we've got congestion that's increasing rapidly throughout multiple areas up and down the island. You're seeing higher rates of collisions. You're seeing more and more closures and things like that. There's the environment and all that stuff as well. So we want to make sure that voters actually know which of the candidates actually support the railway and how they support the railway, how well they understand it, right?
If the goal is to inform voters rather than to tell them who to support, what information do you believe voters need about candidate positions on the corridor that they're not getting currently?
Yeah, right now, it's just a generalized bunch of information that are out there. Like, there's livable CRD and stuff like that sort of try to give them a scorecard on a whole bunch of different things. Whereas what we're doing is we're actually taking statements from the candidates, and we're posting them on our website, the restoreislandrail.com website, where when you're going to cast your vote, you can go there and see if your candidate you want to vote for is on there, or whether you're bouncing back and forth between two of them, and you want something to help you decide. Well, you go to the Restore Island Rail webpage, you see that one of them is in strong support of the railway, and you don't see the other one there. That may be your decision factor, right? Yeah. We know that the railway is not the only factor that people are going to use in their decision on who to vote for, but we want the information in front of them so that they can actually make an informed decision when they do go to vote.
So remind us, how are the candidate positions being gathered and verified? Are they based upon responses to questionnaires, public statements, direct outreach, some combination of all of that?
Yeah, so we put a candidate questionnaire together. It's got 6 questions on it, and it also has instructions in it on to send it into our info@restoreislandrail.com website, email address. And we take that in, and they also provide a statement. And so what we're doing is we're putting that statement online, so people can go to our website, they can click on the CRD or CVRD or whatever regional district they're in, so that they can see where their candidate stands on that information. And we're also going to compile all of the answers that they have into a PDF document that people can download if they want more detail.
So the election page on the website, will it include candidates who oppose rail restoration or alternatively support some other use for the corridor? And if so, how will those positions be presented?
We were going to do that, to be honest with you, but we've decided not to. We want to stay on a positive note for the railway. Like going after people and saying, oh, this person doesn't support the rail, it just doesn't run with our theme. We want to be a very good movement. There's a ton of people behind this, right? There's 43,500 people that have signed our petition now, so it's actually quite significant. And we want to drive forward with a very positive, very positive message for Islanders to get behind.
One of the interesting things I've seen is that Restore Island Rail and the society behind it has registered as a third-party advertiser for the election. What role do you see the society playing during the campaign period?
Yeah, so we may choose to start doing some advertising online, pulling people to our website, explaining what we're doing. And we can do that through, social media and whatnot. We just wanted to make sure we covered all our bases going into this and didn't violate any election rules, right?
Sure.
So we got our third-party election status so that we can spend money and actually advertise across the island, because this corridor is big. I mean, it goes through 5 different regional districts, 225 miles worth of, I think it's 60 different races that are happening within those 5 regional districts.
Yeah.
So, we're going to need that advertising to get the message out there. And we just wanted to make sure that we were falling within the rules. And when I did go through the rules on the third-party advocates, the third-party advertising sponsor, I did see us in there. It actually brought up to me, I'm not sure how these slates run without becoming third-party advertisers.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, we wanted to make sure we were on the right page.
So you touched on this before, but let's dig into a little bit more, because municipal councils do not directly decide whether trains return to the island. Why do local elections matter so much to the future of the corridor then?
Yeah, okay. So, when the candidates are doing up their official community plans and whatnot, right, if they're not looking at the corridor as a corridor for the future, they may not be considering how they should be zoning around it, right? So They are in charge of the zoning. They're going to be, higher density stuff can be around certain areas of the corridor. Stations don't have to be where the old stations were. Maybe there's a better spot for it. They could be making decisions like that. And then just understanding how, so BC Transit, for example, they deal with all the municipalities individually. And so they need to be ensuring that the BC Transit stations and exchanges are along the corridor. Like Nanaimo did that just earlier this year. They directed their staff to ensure that new transit exchanges are connected to the corridor. So that's why the municipal elections matter, and that's why educating the people that are going to be on these councils matters. And that's why we decided to take the approach that we have.
Several candidates have already publicly expressed support for rail restoration, and sometimes candidates who may not even see eye to eye on many other issues. Have you been surprised by the level of support or, frankly, the opposition you've encountered so far?
Oh, no, it's amazing. Honestly, I don't think I would have carried. This is my 4th year doing this now. And if there wasn't such a humongous positive support for this railway, I don't think it would have been able to carry on this long. Mm-hmm. But no, it's well known. Everybody knows it, right? It just makes sense. We've got this rail corridor there. Other cities, they wish that they could have a corridor sitting there that they can just build a railway on. We have it. And everybody recognizes it, but they also recognize the complexity that's involved with ours. Because we've got 5 regional districts, a whole bunch of municipalities. We have First Nations involved in there as well. And it's a big mixing pot of a whole bunch of different opinions and whatnot. And they seem to be cracking the nut finally down in the capital region. So down in the capital region, we have the Reconciliation Corridor Initiative that is led by the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. Right? So the Lekwungen Nations, they're leading the charge on bringing light rail into the CRD. So that's going from basically Goldstream into Victoria. And, the way we see it working would be a high-frequency system in there, and then you'd have something going over the Malahat that was maybe, more commuter rail type, solution.
Having a conversation with Warren Skaalrud from Restore Island Rail about the group's initiatives going into the fall local government elections. But beyond the campaign trail, conversations about the future of rail on Vancouver Island are also gaining momentum as Greater Victoria looks at higher capacity transit into the future and what comes after conventional bus service. We'll explore where rail fits into that discussion after Jade's traffic and weather report. Continuing our conversation with Warren Skaalrud from Restore Island Rail. Warren, thank you for holding the line, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
So for years now, the conversation around the Island Rail corridor has largely been about whether rail service could ever return. But these days, Greater Victoria is now talking about higher capacity transit, growing issues related to congestion, and the rapidly approaching limits of what buses alone can provide. From your perspective, why should the Island Rail corridor be part of that conversation?
Well, for one, the Island Rail Corridor serves the CFB Esquimalt. There's 6,000 people at CFB Esquimalt alone. They're expected to expand to 9,000 within the next 10 years. So additional capacity required for additional ships and submarines, right? So they're going to be probably losing parking. I worked at CFB Esquimalt for 35 years, so I'm aware of the travel patterns of people going to CFB Esquimalt. And they don't go the straightest route. They go, the way that's the quickest. And it has gotten highly, highly congested on the way there and on the way out, especially. So if you take the people that are going to CFB Esquimalt and you actually give them a way to get to the base without having to go through traffic, they're going to take it, or a lot of them are going to take it, right? And the ENN Rail Corridor is the quickest way, like basically by the way of crow flies, right down into Victoria where the Blue Bridge is. So it ends right now just before the Blue Bridge, but the piers are there to actually, cross the strait again or the gorge again, and then into right into downtown. So from my perspective, I think the ENN Rail Corridor has the highest potential ridership than any other route. I know they were talking about back in 2011 going along Highway 1 right into towards Uptown there. But there's not a lot along that route for light rail to really make sense. I mean, you're just going to be getting on, you're going to be going straight there, and that's it. There's nothing in between. So, yeah, the ENN corridor, and this is another really important thing, right? If they tried to do light rail on the Highway 1, you're looking at a 10 to 15-year project because you're talking about upsetting a major highway route. Like, that is the only way in, right now? So whereas the ENN corridor is not even used at all, they could have higher order transit up and running on that in a matter of years rather than decades.
I'm glad you brought that up because BC Transit's draft regional transit plan for the next 25 years suggests that any future use of the Island Rail Corridor would complement higher order transit along that Douglas Street Highway 1 corridor rather than replacing it. Sounds like you wouldn't agree with that assessment.
Well, no, because if you cross the piers down in Victoria, like if you go down, you go through Esquimalt to get to Vic West, and then you actually take it across the water again, you're right into the south end of the Douglas corridor. So you just have to go up north, up that corridor, straight up towards the ferries and the airport.
So when a lot of folks look at the corridor now, which is frankly laid idle now for more than 15 years, they ask themselves kind of this simple question. If the tracks are already there, why aren't we using them? What would you say?
It's been caught up in a lot of controversy, right? If you look back at the First Nation engagement documents, they talked about wanting to move the road. Some of them wanted to do land swaps, some other things. And those weren't really being entertained. Like when I looked at the Island Corridor Foundation's business case, the last one from 2020, it didn't have any adjustments to the corridor. It was just simply get the tracks up and running, right? And that was obviously not palatable to the First Nations, because if you look at what the Lekwungen Nations are doing, they're actually going to move the corridor a little bit. Like they're going to shift it away from some housing and their longhouse, in fact. So, they kept saying, like, you're sticking your fingers in your ear and you're not listening to us. And I think they were right, because now that things have changed, you've got a new CEO of the Island Corridor Foundation in. and they're listening, and they're right after all of that happens, bang, we have the First Nations actually leading the charge in that area to bring light rail in. So to me, it was about being way too rigid. And to be fair, the cheapest way to bring it back online would be to just replace it as it is, like just to fix it up as it is and run the trains. But some adjustments needed to be made, and now that they are being made, we're hearing success.
And I'm glad you brought up the Reconciliation Corridor initiative, because it is now a major part of the discussion surrounding the corridor. How do you see the RCI, the feasibility study it's in the process of producing, influencing the future of passenger rail and transportation planning on the island?
Well, so that's a beautiful intro here. So back in, I think it was 2018, there was a regional transportation service that was conceptualized in the CRD, but it was parked. Nothing was happening with it. And well, back in, I think 2023 or maybe 2024, they picked it back up again and started running with it. So it used to be just that the Victoria Regional Transit Commission was basically it for transit in the region, but it was still fractured. Like there was still all the different municipalities had a say of their own, and it just makes it overly complex to get anything done. With the Regional Transportation Service, and with BC Transit plugged into it, and now also the Island Corridor Foundation plugged into it, suddenly you have a single body that can make decisions, not unlike TransLink, right? So TransLink gets the big projects because they actually speak for the entire Metro Vancouver area. We didn't have that before, and now we do. Now or at least it's developing. And that is key. So what I would like to see is now that there's success happening with that regional transportation service and the Island Corridor is plugged into it, I would like to see them sort of start growing that up the island. Like, so, the Cowichan Valley Regional District should be next in joining that. That's a key piece, because then, you think of yourself as the BC government, you're coming in, you're wanting to do a project, and you're either going to be talking to one person with the Regional Transportation Service, or you've got to talk to 13 municipalities in order to get consensus on moving forward, right? So you want all of that work done in advance.
The island faces a number of transportation challenges, be it to congestion in Victoria or Duncan or Nanaimo, or even interregional travel up island, to even the resiliency of the Malahat Highway itself. Which of those do you believe is restored passenger rail is best positioned to address?
Well, obviously the Malahat would be, I would like to see the project go over the Malahat, first of all, maybe up to Duncan, right? Because the CRD is not that far away from gridlock. Like, it gets so bad there that even if you were to widen the Malahat, for example, you're going to have cars coming down the Malahat faster to go into a highly congested area. That doesn't help anybody, right? So I would like to see the rail go all the way up to Duncan. I know that they probably want to keep it to the CRD because of the Regional Transportation Service, and then figure out what they're going to do up island after that. But the CRD for me, I live up in Shawnigan, right? But I go to the CRD all the time because my mom's there, my kids are there. And so I end up in the middle of that traffic down there. It is the worst down there.
Final moments with Warren Skaalrud from Restore Island Rail, and I'll end with this one, sir, because Restore Island Rail often describes the corridor as a connected transportation asset stretching from Victoria to Courtenay. If portions of that corridor are reclaimed, repurposed, or otherwise cease to be contiguous, what does that mean for the long-term viability of restoring passenger rail service?
Well, obviously, the federal government and the BC government are going to have to talk to the First Nations to figure out, anywhere that they've put up a blockade and said no. But in terms of, they are the ones that are going to have those discussions, whether they can go around them, whether they can find either do some cut and cover or raise it up. But that's going to be up to a conversation of the federal government and the BC government to have. I can't go have that conversation with First Nations because I don't have the money to do anything, right? If I were First Nations and an outsider came and started telling them what they should do, and I don't have any money to be able to do it, it's a pointless conversation. So to me, they need to have those conversations. And quite frankly, the reason that some of those First Nations might have pulled out is just simply because of the fact that they've waited a long time and they're getting tired of waiting.
Warren Skaalrud from Restore Island Rail. I appreciate the conversation this afternoon. All the best.
Thank you very much.